Good morning, everyone. I'm Tara Gillam, Services Innovation Manager at Business West, and welcome to the final session in our autumn webinar and thought leadership series, Innovate 2021, Overcoming Challenges and Building for Growth, supported by Business West and Innovate UK. This series of webinars has been running every Tuesday morning for the last 12 weeks, and we've covered topics ranging from IP, design thinking, funding and finance, leadership strategy, and sales and marketing, as well as promoting the wider bespoke support available from us and how we can add value to your future growth plans in this challenging environment. As mentioned, today is our 12th and final webinar in this series, and we are lucky enough to have Innovate UK's Regional Manager, Layla Burrows, updating us on Innovate UK Funding, how it works and what it takes to be successful. As a participant of Innovate 2021 and subject to Innovate UK eligibility criteria, there is the opportunity to access our comprehensive range of business support services, which includes some access to funding and finance support. I will discuss the next steps on how to access these services at the end of this session. Now, before I hand you over to Layla, there is just a bit of housekeeping I'd like to talk you through. If you have any questions, and there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, please put them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. That one will be moderated throughout. If you'd like to communicate with other attendees, use the chat tab at the bottom. That one is unmoderated. If you have any technical issues or concerns throughout, please raise your hand and one of the hosts will come in and help you out. For on-demand purposes, this webinar is being recorded. Your personal video and microphones will not be used unless invited to speak by the host. Now on to our speaker today. Layla has been working with high growth companies for over 18 years in both the public and private sectors. She has been commercial bid writer with a focus on the creative and digital sector and a funding coordinator for academia. She has focused on international collaborations and knowledge transfer for European framework programs and has been working with Southwest companies, helping them to access funding and finance for the past 8 years. Her role as regional manager broadens awareness of Innovate UK and focuses on regional opportunities and discussions around innovation strategy. So without further ado, I'll put you in the capable hands of Layla.
Thank you, Tara. So I'm going to start the screen share. Okay, thank you very much, Tara. So I think Tara's given a fantastic overview of myself. Thank you. Not much more to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an overview of Innovate UK and the funding competitions or the core competitions that Innovate UK runs. I'm aware that there will be people in this webinar who might have been familiar with Innovate UK or some of these competitions. So I'm only going to cover those in brief. And then the majority of the webinar is going to go over some hints and tips for putting together a successful application, really. But I was going to start off with, excuse me, now my slide won't, oh, I think I've fast forwarded. So a small, quick poll. Again, some of you, I know the answer to this, but have you actually had any success in applying for an Innovate UK grant where you've won and you've delivered a grant? I just want to get a bit of a gauge on the audience and what your success rate's been like. So just click yes or no. We'll give a few seconds and then see where we're at. So I'm aware some of you will be completely new to it and some of you will be experienced. Okay, so if we can have a look at the results. Okay, so the majority of the audience have not had success. Okay, so I just wanted a note on that, and part of the reason why we're actually doing this webinar For the Southwest region, since 2015, 24% of all applicants from the Southwest have actually been successful with Innovate UK. So that's a quarter of all applicants from the Southwest have had success. In real numbers, that's over 900 businesses applying and an average grant size of 544,000. However, behind the scenes and the statistics that we have, a further 25% of the unsuccessful applicants actually scored very highly, so would have been deemed eligible for Innovate UK funding, but the budgets ran out, or you missed, or clients, businesses missed out by a couple of points. So the reason for my job and for doing this webinar as well is how to increase the success rate and make sure those further 25% actually have a better chance of success. Okay, so for those of you that are unaware of Innovate UK, we are part of UK, funded directly by UK government with the UK's Innovation Agency. So we fund businesses and organisations across the UK to accelerate innovation projects, primarily through grant funding competitions. However, the Innovate UK also fund networks such as the Enterprise Europe Network, the Knowledge Transfer Network and the Catapult Network. And I'll talk a little bit more about those later, later in the day, but primarily we are a grant funding organisation paid for by a central government. So what I'm going to do now is give you a very brief overview of the core competitions. I think some of you will be thinking, okay, how do I find out about which competitions are right for me? How do I find out when there's a relevant competition open? So I'll cover some of this next. One of our core programs is through something called the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. Now this is, the Industrial Strategy Challenge is a government initiative that is focusing on the economy in 4 different ways. We have aging society, AI, future of mobility and clean growth. So these are areas that the government recognises as key challenges that we need to address. So I'm not going to read out the themes within those, but what you will find is that Innovate UK will create competitions in and around those challenge funding, so challenge-based, challenge-led competitions. Throughout the year, we will have various competitions within each of these sectors that will be launched. There will be pre-briefing, there will be webinars, and there will be a deadline. And part of the role that I have for the Southwest and all the regional managers in each of the region is to hopefully highlight some of the competitions to your regional stakeholders when they will be coming down the line. So as you've had a look at the sectors, and you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I don't really fit into aging society, or I certainly am not, do not have a business with mobility. We therefore have what is more familiarly known as the open competition, or the SMART grant. This is a grant that runs 4 times a year with 4 deadlines a year. It is open to any sector, any organisation, and we fund typically proposals between 25,000 to 2 million. You can apply as a single entity, or you can also apply as a collaborator. I think there'll probably be some of you on this webinar that have had success or have looked to applying for grants. It is by far the most popular grant that Innovate UK run. So that is core, and that runs 4 times a year, with the next deadline being in January. We also have innovation loans. Now, these loans are typically for nearer to commercialisation activities. So you may have had an Innovate UK grant, or you may have had other support for your business, and you're looking for the final steps of putting your innovation into market. These loans bridge that gap from commercialisation, so they are predominantly for scale-up activities and late-stage research and development. We have had a further 25 million budget approved for innovation loans for 2021, so that programme is still running. Another core programme that has actually been running for over 40 years is the Knowledge Transfer Partnerships. Now, these are opportunities for SMEs to engage with academia. So if you are closely linked to a university and you feel there would be benefit in partnering with the university and having an associate from within that university come and work within your business to create a solution or deliver an innovation project, you can get funding as a partnership with the university to deliver that project. Typically, these are longer grant funding projects than previously with a SMART grant. They can last up to 3 years, sometimes even up to 5 years with some of the companies that I've worked with. You will find that a lot of companies may get 1 or 2 associates over the years, and it's a good way of embedding the innovation into your company. This one, I think, sometimes sits a little bit under the radar with companies, the Small Business Research Initiative. This is where all of the governmental departments liaise with Innovate UK to identify challenges that an SME may be able to provide an innovative solution for. So we will partner with, for example, the NHS, Department for Transport, MOD, etc., who will create an open competition for a business to apply into. Actually, this isn't a grant, it's a contract. So if you can get one of these grants, contracts, they are absolutely fantastic for the business. So unlike a grant where you deliver the project and you then claim for your monies in arrears, this is an actual contract direct into that particular department. A lot of companies find that that is actually an inroad to that supplier, and they then go on and deliver successful contracts in the future. Okay, so there is support available to you to understand more about those competitions and how you access them, whether you're eligible. So just as to rehash that, we've got a thematic competition which run through the industrial strategy challenges. We've got the open competition or the SMART grant. We've got the loans, knowledge transfer partnerships, academia, and a small business research initiative, which are contracts with government. So if you want support, okay, oh, I've forgotten, I've put a poll in here. So 2 questions. Have you actually received support direct from Innovate UK? And have you received support via the Enterprise Europe Network and the Knowledge Transfer Network, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about? If you don't know, put no. Okay, let's have a look at what everybody has said. Okay, so the majority of the people on this webinar have not received any support from Innovate UK and have not received any support from the Enterprise Europe Network. Okay, so what we want to do is change that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Enterprise Europe Network and the Knowledge Transfer Network in terms of the support that you can receive. I think there's probably a misconception as well that I'm just going to. Okay, so actually, Innovate UK, as I've mentioned, isn't just about grant funding. It has 2 networks that are available to you for free as an organisation. We have the Enterprise Europe Network. these are regional teams across the UK, so there will be an advisor either locally to you or centrally within your region. The Enterprise Europe Network primarily exists to help you commercialise and scale up your high growth opportunity. They can also help you with access to funding and finance. So that might not be particularly or necessarily an Innovate UK grant. It could be other areas of finance, whether it's linking you to regional investors or looking at other traditional finance, looking at routes through your bank or alternative finances. They will help you do that. They will also focus on Innovate UK funding. They also have a focus to connect you internationally with other organisations and partners. So if you are looking to grow internationally, the Enterprise Europe Network can help you with those links. We also have the Knowledge Transfer Network, which is more sector specific. So whereby the Enterprise Europe Network are advisors who will help you with your overall business growth. You can also get help from a knowledge transfer advisor in your particular sector. They will also help to connect you with innovators and organisations domestically within the UK and help broker partnerships if you're looking for a partner for your research project or your innovation project. So I think the reason that you've all dialed in is what does success look like to Innovate UK? So in a previous role, as Tara mentioned, I used to work, focus solely with companies on applying into Innovate UK. And I would regularly review applications and look at them prior to submission and advise clients on the best route to success. So I'm going to go over a few of those hints and tips that I would tell my clients. As Tara mentioned, if you've got questions as we go through, please type them in the Q&A and we'll cover those at the end. I think the first thing to consider, and this is all again in the mind for applying to Innovate UK, is have you considered the size of the opportunity and your market? Have you looked further than your regional or domestic market, for example? Have you actually evidenced, can you evidence that there is going to be a substantial take-up and that the funding you're requesting is in line for that potential market opportunity? So for example, if you're looking for £1 million investment, but the market opportunity is really only regional for you, you may want to consider what that market opportunity is further outside of your region and domestically, and then possibly internationally, when you're looking at the value of perceived money from Innovate UK. So just to follow on from that, you'll recognise, I think, some of these tech areas and areas that are generating high innovation and high growth. You'll recognise, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, fintech in London. What you've got to consider is your innovation world leading? I know that sounds very grand, but does your innovation sit at the table with is it going to be competitive in the international market? Not just the international market, but the domestic market as well. So Innovate UK really want to fund projects that are going to be high-flying global innovation projects. One of the things I think that is very important, and we spend, or the Enterprise Europe Network spend quite a lot of time talking to businesses about, is where your technology readiness level is, or your market readiness, or the point at which you're applying to Innovate UK. This is quite important because Innovate UK doesn't fund early stage or blue sky research or the thinking behind things, nor does it fund projects that go are closer to commercialization other than with a loan. So ideally, with Innovate UK, you should be around market readiness level or technology readiness level 3, 4, 5 and beyond. What does that really mean? It means that you may have a small piece of market validation, or you have a prototype that you have tested and validated within user groups, for example, but primarily that you've done your proof of concept and you understand that it will work, and you may have even gone some way into the route of creating a prototype, and that you have something to actually show the assessors rather than a concept or an idea, and you can show how far you've already got. And so ideally, having a prototype or an idea of how that prototype would be developed would be ideal. Now, this is always a discussion that can get quite heated when we're speaking to businesses. I think a key thing to remember is that Innovate UK funding is public money. It's from UK taxpayers. So when you're thinking about whether to put in or apply for public money for funding, think, you know, would I be happy for this to be funded? Would I be happy for my tax to go into this project? And I know it's a bit of possibly a bit of a contentious topic to put up on there, but part of the questioning is why should I receive public money for my innovation? So always ask yourself that: would I fund this project? If I took a step back and it wasn't my business, would I fund this? Within the Innovate UK application, there are 10 questions. The first thing to consider is whether your project aligns with the scope of the competition. So if you remember back to the competitions that I'd highlighted, in particular the grand challenges, the thematic competitions, please make sure that your project aligns with that scope. So there are competition documents and guidelines that will outline the types of projects that they want to fund. If in doubt, please seek advice. There is a helpline at Innovate UK that you can contact, and the networks, the Enterprise Europe Network and the Knowledge Transfer Network will help with that. We do see quite regularly where applicants have not read the project guidelines in depth or not understood them, and have therefore fallen without the scope, and their application has not been assessed. Now, this could be as simple as, for example, a competition might say, we will not fund projects over £500,000. And for some, for whatever reason it happens, the applicant has missed that, or they've got an idea in their head, okay, 500,000, but when they've submitted their application, they've put our project will be 524,000. And then in the narrative, they may put that we'll fund the 24,000 themselves. What actually happens at the first stage is the system will read that the budget's gone above what they will fund, and it will be kicked out and not even assessed. So it can sometimes fall on something as annoyingly straightforward as that. So my advice is please ask, and please double check that you fit within scope. One of the things, if you go through the Enterprise Europe Network, you'll spend a lot of time looking at your value proposition. So these are all questions that you will have to answer in your application. Basically, have I actually got a viable business case? Not is my innovation fantastic and world leading, but is there a business case? Can I actually get this to market? Have you thought about who your target customers and end users are? And if so, how do you actually get your product to those customers? Does it highlight any, what are the motivations or the points of reference for your target customers and end users? What will make them buy it? Do you actually understand the dynamics of your market and how you enter that in terms of, for example, supply chains possibly? Are you speaking to the right people? Do you understand people's purchasing power? Or if it's a case of markets that have procurement, do you understand when and how they procure? It might be a useful opportunity for you to do something called a value proposition canvas, and I'm going to reference that a bit at the end, or a business model canvas, which will help you do, and I advisors, if any advisors are listening who actually do this, they'll help me, but it can be a bit of a sort of back of the fag packet working out on whether your idea meets all of these targets, and it will talk about who is your market, your route to market, who do you, what partners do you need, what resources do you need? And it will also go through, when I'm referencing the motivations and aspirations of your target customers. So really trying to get under the skin of why people would buy this, but you can do it quite easily, and the Enterprise Europe Network advisors will go through that with you. Is it easy to adopt? Are your customers and end users going to find this easy to pick up? Do you actually have to do any, is there any learning or education behind this? Do you have to change people's behaviours, for example? If it is, and quite often a totally new innovation that people don't know that they need yet, do you need to start talking about behaviours, for example? And finally, does it fulfil a genuine need in the marketplace? You'll also have to talk about economic, social, environmental, and regional benefits. So this is not simply, how does my innovation create money for my business, but what impact does it have societally? Is it helping people lead better lives? Is it going to create jobs and generate revenue into the region? Is it actually going to have an impact within the sector that you're working in, and have a wider impact other than outside of your company? Are there environmental benefits to it? Cost reductions and savings? These are all things that an Enterprise Europe Network advisor and a knowledge transfer network advisor can help discuss. You might be thinking, okay, my project doesn't particularly have any environmental benefits, but you must be able to discuss them even in brief, or even to be able to say why your project does not have environmental benefits. That's okay, but you must discuss each of these areas. One of the things that I've spent a long time talking to clients about is, what are you actually going to do with the money? So you say you want 100,000, 50,000, 500,000, but what are you actually going to do with that? How big is your project? And quite a lot of the time, people can't answer that. When you apply to Innovate UK, you have to have a very clear and concise project plan, even for an early stage prototype project. So you must be able to talk about what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how long it's going to take you to deliver it, what the milestone is achieved at the end of that particular work package or area of activity, and how much it's going to cost. Are there other people that will come in and deliver that work for you? So you might be thinking, well, gosh, I don't know all of that. And actually, if I had the funding, I would be able to work all these things out. That's not the case. You have to be able to identify very clearly what you're going to do before you apply. And it has to be credible as well, with realistic costs and realistic deliverables. The assessors who will be looking at it will be quite often specialists in your area. So they will have an idea as to whether those deliverables are realistic. And another tip is, don't talk yourself out of, be realistic with that plan. Don't put things down that you know cannot be delivered. You might want to consider collaboration for your project. As a small organisation, you might realise that there are certain skills or areas of expertise that you need to bring into the project because you can't deliver it on your own. You can, for the majority of Innovate UK grants, collaborate. That can be with academia, universities, research organisations. It could be with a catapult centre, or it could be with other SMEs. Also, though, think very carefully about benefits to that collaboration. How will you work together once the project has been delivered? Are you working with people who will take or help you take this product to market easier than if you were to do that on your own? There is a question in the Innovate UK application that talks about risk. And something that I have seen a lot is that a company will talk themselves out of or say that their project is low risk because they think that sounds better, and they don't want to be perceived as putting something forward that is high risk. That is not the case at all. For innovation, risk is likely to be very high and things are likely to go wrong. You are, after all, creating something that has never come before, or putting together certain technologies that have not worked in the same way before. We appreciate this, and that is why we would encourage you to have an open discussion about the reality and the risks for your project. It's okay to have high risk, as long as you can talk about how you mitigate that and how you would go about solving those risks should they happen. That's okay. Please don't talk yourself out of getting a successful grant by pretending or saying that there's no risk. So I'm going to do a quick wrap up of what I've talked about because I want to leave room for questions. Primarily, make sure it fits within scope. Don't write yourself out of it being assessed because it hasn't fitted within scope. Read the briefing document, watch the briefing webinar, ring the helpline, speak to an advisor. There is no wrong question at all. If you're working with partners, before you submit, agree key points with them and create a project outline and a consortia agreement. Who's going to do what? When are they going to do it? Who owns what parts? Even in terms of the application, give people tasks and allocate those tasks with plenty of time. What you don't want is you've asked a partner for a particular piece of information and it's still the day before the deadline and they haven't given it to you. So work in key points with those partners and what you're going to do if you're collaborating. For anyone who's had a look at an Innovate UK grant application, you don't actually have much space. You've got 10 questions, each with 400 words. When you start to write it, you'll soon find, I think, that you'll go over the word count very easily. So you haven't got much space. So make sure that every word counts. Don't talk in overly technical language. Make it as simple to read as possible. You don't need to actually go into huge amounts of detail. You need it to be very clear and very simple. Sometimes less is more. Going back to the point I made about the work packages, make sure your plan is realistic. If you actually get the funding, you will have to deliver what you have said in the work plan, so make it realistic. don't be over ambitious. Make sure that you actually do have the capacity and the capability to deliver it. It's all very well asking for a certain amount of money, but if you can't meet those project objectives and deadlines, your project may fail. So make sure it's realistic. Give yourself enough time. Essentially, this is about being convincing to a group of assessors. Ask yourself, and I mentioned this when I brought up the Treasury slide, the tax slide, would you invest in this? Would you be happy for your money being invested in this? You have to put a very compelling case together to convince the assessors that your company should receive that money. I've just spent a bit of time talking about the risk. It does need a sufficient amount of risk. Innovate UK are happy with risk. Any assertions that you make, you must be able to quantify and justify. So for example, figures around market size, you need to provide evidence and backup or a source of your information. Please don't put arbitrary figures without being able to validate them and reference them. So when I've been reading applications, you would be surprised about the amount of times that I've read the first page and I've got 4 or 5 paragraphs into it, and I still don't truly know what the innovation is that is being proposed or what the project is. I'm having to search for it within the information, or the company is waiting until later in the application to tell us what the actual project is. Make sure that you're able to do that within the first few sentences and paragraphs. You want to be standing out right from the off. So when that assessor's reading your application, within the first few paragraphs, they're hooked. And they think, gosh, this is really exciting. I'm interested in reading and finishing this application. Don't make the assessor search for answers. Be as punchy and bold right from the off. Tell them what you're going to do right from the off. And I can't reiterate this enough, really, but please get advice and feedback from as many people as you can. But do contact both the Enterprise Europe Network and the Knowledge Transfer Network or any other advisor that you're working with quite early on. I know the deadlines come around very quickly, but if you look to get advice 1 week, even 2 weeks before the deadline, it might be that there quite simply isn't the capacity to work with you. So make sure you get an advisor well before time. I do know that the Enterprise Europe Network will work with companies in as much as 6 months to a year before applying. So you might be thinking, okay, well, I've got Innovate UK funding on my horizon. There isn't a particular deadline that I'm applying to, but get yourself an advisor now who can talk you through everything I've discussed and more now, so that when you're ready to apply, you're not rushing, and you can get the most value from that advisor. And to reiterate that, really, and it's the last point I'm going to make before questions, is don't leave it too late. Ask questions. There are no wrong answers. Make sure that you give yourself plenty of time. The Innovate UK helpline can answer all number of questions. They do come back to you within 24 hours. So please do not leave it too late. 2 resources. Marcus is going to share these slides with you, so no need to scribble down those URLs. There's the Knowledge Transfer Network Good Application Guide and the Value Proposition Canvas and Business Model Canvas. I would recommend having a look at those if you're considering applying to Innovate UK. So these are my contact details. I'm going to hand back over to Marcus for the Q&A, or no, so Tara, sorry. Yeah, no, I've seen some questions coming in, but I've tried to ignore them in the little chat. Yeah, so, yeah. And the postman's come, so there you go. Yeah, sorry, just leaving it outside. Thank you, Tara.
Okay, so the first question that I can see here is from Serena, and you said success in the south. What about success in other parts of the country? Yes. How does the south stack up?
How does the south? So the southwest. So we are actually for the southwest. We actually are slightly underperforming in parts of other areas. So the southeast and London and into the Midlands do well with Innovate UK funding. I can provide statistics for other regions, Serena, and your relevant regional manager, wherever you're based, will be able to give you some information as well about success rates in that region. But Serena, wherever you're based, if you want to email me, I can find some statistics for that region for you. But yeah, the southwest, we are looking to increase the success rate. We're about 5th in line after southeast, London, Midlands, Manchester, and then southwest.
Okay, there's 3 questions come in from now I hope I pronounced this correctly, Raghavindra. So the first one was, can we contact more than one network for our ideas?
The very short answer to that is absolutely yes. I would not hesitate to make the most of all of the networks that you can get for support and others in your region. I mean, you know, Enterprise Europe Network and Knowledge Transfer Network are Innovate UK funded initiatives, but there may be other support organisations. Yes, I would get all the help you can get. There's all the minds you can get, and even when you're if you've written an application, ask your friends and family to review it. You know, if they don't understand it, it's unlikely that an Innovate UK assessor will understand it. So the more the merrier. Okay.
What is the average score that we need to achieve to win the Innovate UK or Smart Grant competitions?
Yes, that's a good question. So with Smart Grant, in the last round of scoring, funded applications scored 85 to 86% plus. That is quite a high score. Please bear in mind, though, the Smart Grant is the most popular Innovate grant. If you're going for one of the thematic competitions or other competitions, quite often you can score 70% and you will get the funding. So it does vary between competitions, but for Smart, it is around 85, 86%.
And another one, can a company apply multiple applications in different sectors who has various ideas?
Yes, but what I would ask you to consider is which of your ideas has the best market opportunity before you. So I would not recommend applying multiple times to see which one has success and therefore will go with that project. You must consider which project has got that can get you quickest to market or has the most market scope. But yes, you can apply. What I would caveat that with, though, is you can only apply twice for the same project. So if you're unsuccessful, you can resubmit, but you can only apply twice for that project.
Brilliant. And then one final question that I've seen come in. So if anybody else has got a question, do put them into the Q&A section. What size of company is eligible for the different competitions?
That's another good question. So each competition will have slightly varying rules around the size of company, but primarily Innovate UK focuses on SMEs. So really, that is actually, you can be pre-revenue, that's okay, as long as you're a registered legal entity. So you can be any size. You can You can apply with academics as well, research organisations, and you can apply with medium-sized and large organisations. But sometimes a medium-sized or large organisation is not permitted to lead a bid. It has to be an SME that leads the bid. But any sized organisation can apply, but each competition will have some specific guidelines on that.
Say that you're... okay, I was just going to ask a question on that. So say that you're a too small a business for that competition. Can you partner with someone?
Yes.
Therefore, but you couldn't lead, is that right?
No, so there's no such thing as too small a business for Innovate UK. So as long as you're a registered legal entity, you can apply for competitions. And in fact, with the SMART grant, about a third of applicants are successful, are pre-revenue micro companies who are starting up with a fantastic innovation. So there's no company too small. You've just got to make sure that, if it is one or two of you, do you need to partner with larger organisations in your supply chain in order to bring your project to market? There's no wrong or right answer, but just consider, if you are small, you might want to partner with others, because it might seem impossible to take that to market by yourself, but not impossible.
And Eleanor's just asked, do you have to be a limited company? Do you have to be registered?
You have to be registered, yes, you do.
Okay. Well, as the questions have kind of dried up, oh, just saying that, someone's just popped one in. So Federico has just said, in general, does match funding need to be justified in the application process? For instance, as a startup, an investment might be conditional to securing an Innovate UK grant.
There are some Innovate UK grants where investment is conditional, but certainly not all of them. So you will have to talk about where you will be getting that match funding from, but you do not have to prove it at the point of application. So you might want to discuss, if we get this grant, X, Y, and Z investors may come on board, for example. If you win the grant, you'll then go through a grant contracting phase, and it is at that phase that you then have to actually evidence that those investors exist and will invest in the company. So you can discuss it. You do have to talk about how you're going to cash flow the project and what resources you're going to put in it. But in terms of evidencing it, you do that when you go through your contracting, grant contracting.